You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast, a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to our sponsors on Patreon, Captivate, and Apple Podcast. You could join them on one of those networks, or you can support the show by making a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the show's description.
Carpenter, you frame a house for those who need protection. Laborer, you lift a heavy burden for the weak. Leaders build a city that all children may rejoice in. May God's kingdom come, on earth His will be done.
Ephesians 4:25-29 in the Christian Standard Bible say, "Therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let the thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear." In the book of Ephesians, St. Paul is explaining what it means to be the church, and before this pericope, Paul wrote that the church is to work together in all of our different roles. Here, St. Paul insists the church builds one another up in word, deeds, and ties our occupational work to the idea. Kristen, Tideman, how do you think the way we present ourselves in work could tie into the idea of building up one another?
Yeah, well, I love that this saying, because we are members of one another. I think that is just beautiful on its own, but it just reminds me that so much of our lives, even like, and we'll get into this with my job, is kind of like, feel solitary. It actually does impact so many other people. And yeah, work, we'll talk about, like, again, my perspective with events and some marketing things, but it's basically, it helps other people do what maybe they can't do, and they help me, they do things I can't do. And I think that's beautiful, and that goes to so many jobs as well.
Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast with the Whole Church Job Fair, where we're talking to people about their day-to-day lives and their occupations, and seeing whether or not the stuff that we're arguing about in our churches, in our seminaries and all that stuff, if it actually matters. Does it make a difference in people's lives? And today, we have a special guest, a dear friend of ours, someone we all look up to, even the one and only Kristen Tideman, the real mind behind Theology Beer Camp. Sorry, Trip. We're gonna be honest here. We believe in honesty.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you like your tidy studios. And just like at one point I compared you to Indiana Jones and Ryan Doe's podcast, and I feel like that's the best introduction. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, anytime I can run around and get into adventures, that is my favorite time, but usually my days aren't that exciting.
Yeah, there's not a lot of boulders,
Yeah.
Not a beer camp,
unfortunately, but
yes.
Sometimes there's snakes.
Not a lot.
No, there's not. But
oh my God.
If he lets a few more Pentecostals in, we might make it happen.
You never know.
I'm bringing my own this year.
Oh my goodness.
Bring your own snake. Theology Beer Camp 2020.
Yeah.
That voice you're hearing, guys, he's actually the one who convinced the Almighty to make snakes. In the beginning, God created everything. He said it was good, and TJ was there. I was like, I bet you can make it a little bit better. What if you just, I don't know, added snakes?
Yeah.
And God was like, man, TJ, you're so wise. And he did that. So we have the mind behind snakes, the one and only TJ, Tiberius Juan Blackwell, here with us today. Thank you, TJ, for having your own show that I get to be on.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. And if you like what you're listening to, then check out the On His Own Ministries network website. The link's below for shows that are like ours and very much not like ours, but that we're friends with. And there's much cool stuff on there you can check out. If you're already listening on YouTube, maybe like and subscribe, maybe. That would be super helpful for me personally. I would like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you all know what I would like a lot. It's something we do at the beginning of every show. It's a holy sacrament here. And that is, of course, the sacrament of silliness, where we start with a silly question. A friend of all of ours brought to us this silly question. On our Facebook group, we were asking people, what are the biggest theological issues of the day that we want to see if they're relevant or not? And Samantha Perez, beautiful, wonderful friend of ours, said, I know the theological issue that we need an answer to right now is a hot dog a sandwich. So we're asking everybody, since that got a lot of votes on our Facebook group, we're making everybody fill us with wisdom. TJ answered the first episode. I'll answer at the last episode of the series. Today, we get Kristen's wisdom. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I did listen to one of your episodes. There were a lot of hot dog sandwich believers, and I am not one of them.
Ooh.
I think definitionally, you could definitely fit it. You could get it in there. You could make it work. But experientially, and also like when I'm craving a sandwich, it's a very different craving than craving a hot dog. I don't think it works. Don't think it works.
Well, you just eat it sideways.
That doesn't make it better. It still
It
just
does.
doesn't
It makes
feel
it
like
feel-
a sandwich.
It does. But is the casing? But in what way, if any, do you think that question could be relevant in your day-to-day life, your work life?
Oh man. Well, there's lots of ways you can, in my work life, you can look at things as with the hot dog and sandwich. And one big thing I do, I'll share more later, I'm sure, is websites for people. And websites, man, they can be a lot like a sandwich in that people are like, I want this, I want that, mayo, mustard, relish. And then you're like, relish on a sandwich? That belongs on the hot dog. And you can explain certain things that are going to be more palatable for more groups of people, but sometimes people still have specific tastes. So that's how it's relevant in my life.
I like it. Yeah. It's a good see, it's a good move. It's a good move. If you try hard enough, anything can be relevant. You just gotta think about it.
Think about Relevant Magazine.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't pick out the best title.
But we mentioned a lot earlier. The reason we're doing this series, a lot of our listeners, the people who listen to our show according to stats and numbers that we blindly just read and go, yeah, that's probably right. Are pastors, theologians, church leaders, people who are attending seminary. These are the people listening to our show a lot of the time. And we believe that our church leaders could benefit from hearing more and learning more from people who are different occupations, who aren't pastors, who aren't in seminary necessarily. So that's why we're doing this series, is that those who are in these positions listening to the show can hear from people who are outside of that world a little bit, or maybe kind of in that world, it's a different perspective. So we want to ask you, Kristen, starting off, would you mind kind of unpacking some of your history with the church, ministry, faith community, all that kind of stuff, like where you find yourself now for our listeners?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in church from like birth, basically. My parents each had a little bit of a Baptist history. So that's kind of my familial theological sort of underpinning. It was so funny. I remember being like 4 years old and we're driving to church. I lived in New Jersey at the time. We drove by my friend's house. She was outside playing and I'm like, why isn't she in church, Mom? I'm like, everyone's supposed to be in church right now. And they were like, she doesn't go. And I'm like, what? She doesn't go? Well, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, but evangelical, really. Like my upbringing, we moved a couple times as kids and stayed at kind of Baptist ish churches, or we went to a Bible church at one point. But then my primary church from when I started living in Pennsylvania was non-denominational. And in high school, I got super involved, which like really set a tone. I also was going to Christian school at the time, an evangelical school. So I was really soaking it all in. And I remember being like very, even, by my own estimations, looking at others, very serious. Like I was taking it seriously. Sometimes I was a little judgy and I'm like, I don't know if everyone's taking it as seriously as they should. I'm like, I'm reading the whole Bible, not as many times as Joshua, of course, who reads it multiple times a year. But I was like, okay, people aren't even trying to have their quiet times. I was like, what are they thinking? And so I was like, helped lead youth group and went to small group, like the whole, everything you could picture, really very involved. And then when it came time, I should speed this up because I'm only at college, but I almost went to Wheaton, did not go to Wheaton College, went to a public university because I was like, I'm still going to go to church. And I did go to church and was very involved and was like, not a problem. Like, I don't mind public school. It's not changing my faith. Got involved with a Christian ministry in Ecuador and lived in Ecuador for 3 years.
I did not know that. That's so cool.
That's that's my other life story. Where I worked, it was like very much a learning and like volunteering kind of mixed, where you were helping with on the ground organizations like food kitchens, juvenile detention center, after school programs, but then also learning some different skills, which pertains actually to what I do now. There was marketing classes and web design classes. That was my first taste of like design and anything like that. And so, I ended up working with that organization for a couple of years after doing the internship program. And then I was like, do I stay in Ecuador and just live here? And I was kind of weighing that. And I'm like, I don't really know if that's the move. And so I came back, moved to Philadelphia, which is about an hour from where I grew up, and started working there, gotten very involved with a Reformed church. So a little different, but I was kind of starting to move away from like evangelicalism. Actually, the program in Ecuador was multi-denominational, which was my first real exposure to some denominations, like more Pentecostal or even some like Reformed, or just even more maybe more open to movements of the Spirit than I had been in my own tradition. So that was very interesting, but I think opened me up to be like, okay, well, I don't have to just go to like the biggest church in town. I was really drawn to this church in Philly because of it was quite liturgical, and I was starting to be kind of in my head, I think, more about certain things, which then translated into, after being in Philly a couple of years, I decided to go back to grad school for philosophy. And I did that in Vancouver, Canada. Yeah, and I really focused on the philosophy of religion. So some of my classes that I took that were highlights were reason and belief in God, not reasons to believe in God, reason and belief in God, and then suffering and belief in God. And my grad school, Trinity Western University, was a Christian university. So I was like, I didn't do this for undergrad. Now I want to be serious, and I want these answers. And there were actually a lot of theological issues kind of at play in my mind that motivated me returning to school. But it was funny. I didn't choose to go to seminary because I do think it was, I don't know, I didn't see myself as like, well, I'm not going to ministry. Like, and I think
providence.
Yeah, well, exactly. But if you're also not in a ministry role per se in your church, and you don't have a church leader necessarily guiding you into a seminary program, I think you're not as familiar with those program options. Now, while I was in grad school, I ended up working at the seminaries that were associated with the school. It was a consortium with 4 seminaries of different denominations, which I thought was a very interesting setup. So learned a lot about seminary programs there and kind of secondhand theology. I had an amazing boss when I worked there, and we would sometimes, part of it was COVID, but then some was in the office, but at times just had like the best chats. And I'm like, this is great. Like, this is why this is like why I came here. This is what, school is all about. Even though that was my job. And now, so I came back to the East Coast. I could get more details, but I won't get too mired in the minutia. I am actually not at a church. And there's reasons for that, I would say. From grad school, I definitely moved more progressive theologically than I had been all growing up and through most of my 20s. And I would say even the church I'd been to prior when I was in Philly, I'm like, I'm not sure that I theologically align. That being said, and I have visited, I'm open to going to church. I'm considering it. And now I'm thinking about the potential pastors listening in Philly who are going to call me up. No, but I have thought, it's not that I need absolutely everything to align. I don't think that's necessarily the case as much as I think it's, just recognizing partially it will be a commitment. Like I want to be committed, not just a visitor. Anytime I'm involved, I'm kind of like, I'm part of this. But I think it's a little bit of the deciding. Yeah, it's probably just that simple, deciding. And I could give more details there, but that's my overview. And so very, very churched, a lot of different here and there, lots of interdenominational experiences, but I think, and then of course beer camp plays into that too, because that's kind of like,
right.
That's kind of in a way
community.
like, I was going to say, it is kind of like my church community in a way, like, and all the people that I see, even though we're only all in person that one time every year. So
A couple quick follow-ups. Was it Ecuador or Vancouver where you learned to be female Indiana Jones?
Oh gosh. Probably started in Ecuador. Had some crazy adventures. Sometimes I was like, I should not be. I'm like, this is not safe. Like there was one time where I literally had an opportunity to jump off of a bridge, and I was like, you know what? This is too similar to the saying, I'm going to draw the line and not jump off a bridge just because my friend did.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, I would have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would feel less safe in Vancouver personally.
Yeah. But I actually, more serious follow-up though, because you mentioned it a little bit, and there might be some people who are unfamiliar, but what is the difference of philosophy of religion and theology from your understanding?
Yeah, the way I describe it to people, which sometimes I'm like, would even philosophers agree with this? But I would say it's very similar to philosophy. It just has more premises. And so theology essentially accepts predominantly, like we're usually talking about Christian theology, and you're accepting the Bible as the starting place, saying, okay, we have this. Now, how do we deal with this text and interpret it and lean on what we've had, given to us by the tradition. You could get into, even in philosophy, you have like things like the Wesleyan quadrilateral and like how we put trust in certain things over others. And I would say you're still employing reason, but philosophy can kind of be like, well, we don't even know about this Bible stuff. Let's take a step back. The other way it's kind of funny, like I would compare philosophy and biblical studies. What philosophy is to like theology, history is to biblical studies, like kind of in that way, like anyway, so that's my layperson-ish take. It's only a master's degree. It's not a PhD, so I could have more to learn.
Of course, yeah. So could you share with our listeners what about like just kind of what you do with Tidy Studios and what your involvement is with like Theology Beer Camp?
Yeah. So Tidy Studios is a kind of a promotional partner for primarily academics, not exclusively, but usually people that have some academic leaning or association and who are trying to get their project often to a wider audience. So I see Theology Beer Camp as fitting under that. Obviously, Theology Beer Camp is an event, so a bit more involved, a little different than just making a website or helping with some ads or copy or something like that. But it is also reaching people, just as, Trip Fuller, that's a lot of his, his shtick, his main thing, getting that knowledge out of the ivory tower. But yeah, with my clients, a lot of them lean either Christian, post-Christian, or just maybe post-evangelical. So still kind of Christian, but more progressive. And so a lot of the projects are directly relevant to church and ministry and some of the stuff, you talk about on your podcast. Like, it's crazy. One of the projects I'm working on right now is a seminary, formation. Like, it's assessing how people's maturity actually is formed through seminary, not just their knowledge, but their character. And so extremely relevant. Another project studies nuns and duns, Nones, not NUN, of course, and how their experience with the church. There's certain words in this whole, this is kind of this whole realm of study, religious residue, things like that. But yeah, kind of categorizing nuns and duns with the intention of providing them with resources for meaning making. And very interesting, again, from where I've come from, and a lot of the people I know, and I think people at camp as well. But that's just a sample of some of the things I do.
Yeah, that's really
just taste, not the portfolio, just
not quite.
So this is the Whole Church Job Fair. And before getting into anything else, if someone never heard of what it is you do, how would you describe your job, and how would you address anyone who might be interested in pursuing a career like yours?
Yeah. Well, because I really am a one person studio, if you will, one man show, I would say starting there, I kind of described what I do. It's a promotional partner. In a way, it's very much like managing your own time, your business, doing the biz dev, but also then, you're managing things for your clients in terms of their projects, whether, again, a lot of them have ended up being web projects because so many people need them. But I would say if you are interested in this career, there is need. So a lot of people need websites. That's how they get their information out to the world. And a lot of people can make their own websites. I don't necessarily have to be this, I'm not this like linchpin for everyone. Like, oh, we need someone just like Kristen. And there are tons of agencies. There are big agencies that do big sites. I mean, websites can get very expensive. If you're doing a bigger site, you could have a site. Well, I worked at a web agency actually when I first lived in Philly, and you can have sites easily over $100,000. Even if you're doing it just for a university, and it's not, universities have tons of sites under their like umbrella admissions site. It's not like you just have one site to rule them all, if you will. And so where I fit in really well, and where someone could think about this, there are tons of people doing this, but my specialty, like my knowledge, having been to grad school, having this connection to academics, serves those academics in a different way because I can kind of speak their language. And also I hit at a budget, at a price point that's going to be a lot more accessible than going to a big agency. Most of these people they're not trying to spend, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a website. I mean, if anyone wants to pay me that for a website, I'm not going to be so upset.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that's kind of when you fit into a market that is right, like kind of the proper size for you. So that's a little bit, I mean, again, the events side too, that's different. And I'm marrying these two currently, actually in the process of trying to define them. Events, you do have to be kind of a crazy person to do because there's so many details. But ultimately, if you get an event, you have to keep a level head. That's the biggest thing. During the event, you have to just know, like, oftentimes no one can answer the question for you. You just have to make a decision. And that's kind of what I like about it, but it's also challenging.
Yeah.
It reminds me kind of like running a restaurant. Someone will come up to you and ask, "Oh, this is happening. What? I'm just going to say what I want to happen."
Yeah. But not everyone feels comfortable with that. Not everyone feels like empowered and, or they might feel like, I don't want to make the wrong mistake, but sometimes, or like the wrong choice, but sometimes you will, but something has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, as far as like the restaurant stuff too, like it's interesting because I've seen situations where a manager has freaked out because, oh my God, we're 30 minutes behind on prep, and it's made the entire shift awful, even though they have enough people and everything, because like their headspace is bad. It makes everybody bad. And I've seen a spot where like I've literally worked where it's been me, one other person, and a manager, and they're like, oh, the line's out through the door. And the manager's like, all right, so they'll have to wait a little bit. And the shift ran great. It was fine.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. It's like that person kind of in that position can really shape how the whole team feels. It's kind of like the Bible verse at the beginning, if you will.
Almost intentional, yeah.
Oh.
So what are some things that are normal in your occupation that others might not think often about, which probably most of it, but specifically for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with kind of the web side of things. And I wouldn't say, actually, it's so funny. My own website is currently, I'm redoing it. So if you go, you'll probably be quite underwhelmed. But there's some really interesting things to think about in that regard. And I think a lot of people view a website as like, because it's so visual, they want it to represent themselves. Like they want to feel like, yeah, this is me. Like almost when you get like a headshot or something, you want it to look just the right way to capture your best angles, things like that. But the thing that we don't always remember about websites is it's for your audience. It's for the people that you're imagining will visit. And you want as much as possible for it to direct them to some course of action, whether that's reaching out, whether that's downloading something, signing up for, on some form, or whether it's, getting tickets for an event, something like that. You want to make it easy, clear. And the other thing, and I just find this so interesting, is at this point in time, anyone who's on the internet, which is most of us, has been trained by the entire internet their whole lives. So, do you know what a hamburger menu is? Since we talked about sandwiches earlier. It's like the 3 lines, that when you're going to press it, it's going to pop out to something bigger. Yeah. At some point, you learned that almost like, we learned kind of language and things like that, where you couldn't say when, but at some point you were trained to do that. And there's definitely there are people with more of a, I'll say like a computer literacy, if you will, like people probably, I'm imagining we all fit into that, where we're on our computers a lot. But there are people, especially if they didn't grow up with computers, who are not always going to know those things. So when people want to do something fancy or something that looks cool, it might be really fun. And a lot of times usually that's for these bigger agencies anyway. But it basically is confusing if you get too crazy with features or things that people aren't used to from the rest of their time on the internet. So kind of a psychological component there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as far as like language goes, we talked about in the restaurant, there's certain language that we use that might just sound weird outside of that context, or like, actually related to what you do that I, for some reason, haven't mentioned yet in this series, which is weird. I started an online store. So I was like an online sales coordinator for a nonprofit for about a year, because I was really just there to start it and then leave, because nonprofit couldn't afford to keep paying me because it's nonprofit and I need profit. So, but like, is there any like language stuff though? Like, because like you mentioned like the hamburger, anything else like for you that like maybe other people don't think about, that it's like something you say all the time?
Yeah. I was trying to think about this. One thing I definitely say a lot is user experience. And if you guys probably know, it's abbreviated UX, which people go, you can be like a specialist in this. You can be a UX strategist, UX designer. And I'm not those things, but again, user experience is so central. And it relates, we're talking a lot about the restaurant, so like customer experience. Experience is so key. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you said one earlier. that I just
which
picked.
one?
Biz dev.
Oh my goodness.
say
See,
that.
I don't even realize that that's a thing.
So funny.
Yeah, business development, which is essentially kind of like the sales part of your business, developing business. Where you get more clients to also make a profit.
I bet there's one that we both say or think or talk about a lot that normal people who don't run podcasts and do websites. SEO. You talk about SEO a lot?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, again, you can go crazy with that. And that's something where everyone talks about algorithms these days, but people are like, oh, the algorithms changed, so this SEO practice doesn't matter anymore.
I hear that so much.
Everyone wants best practices. Yeah. And again, that's where when you have a bigger agency, you can have all these like specialized roles. But there's certain things like, alt text. You guys know alt text?
Yeah, for
disabled.
It's just like, it's essentially, I mean, I guess it's like alternative text technically, but if you have an image on a website, there can be a lot of accessibility concerns on a website, and it matters more in certain arenas, and academia is one of them. A lot of times websites need to meet certain accessibility standards to even kind of carry the name of the university, or they could actually be liable. But alt text is text. You have to enter it into this. If you're not coding directly, which I don't, I use a content management system. Now here we go, a CMS, where if you enter that text, it can get picked up by a screen reader that describes what the image is. So
yeah, that comes up when I do. I use Google Analytics a lot when we write the descriptions for some of the shows on the network. So yeah.
Well,
nice.
I just never think of what it's called. I'm just like, I know that where it's at on the screen.
Yeah,
right.
It's a feature on Twitter that nobody uses anymore.
Yeah,
but it's really cool that Twitter has it.
And yeah, I've seen Instagram has it too, but sometimes Instagram auto creates that alt text now, but sometimes I still like try and plug it in. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But the meat of these episodes are job fair. We want to walk through 12 big theological topics that are often debated by theologians and podcasters and pastors, and just to see how the ideas actually impact us in our day-to-day work lives. So we're going to go through 12 topics that our Facebook group voted on, except for the hot dog one. And we just need you to tell us if you think the topic is somewhat relevant, not relevant, or extremely relevant, or you've never heard of it, which is a perfectly valid answer. So afterwards, we're going to pick a couple to discuss more in depth, but are you ready?
I think so. This was hard when I was looking at these, so I'll do my best.
Yeah. So, soteriology.
Somewhat relevant. Again, I put a little asterisk here at the beginning.
Yeah.
This is like based off of the content that my clients are dealing with primarily, and how then I'm dealing with it. So there we go. There's that.
Right, naturally. So, free will versus predestination.
Somewhat relevant.
Right. Atonement models.
Not really relevant.
Continuationism versus cessationism.
Not really relevant.
Christology.
Maybe somewhat relevant.
God's nature.
Somewhat relevant.
Social justice.
I would say maybe more relevant.
Yeah, slightly more relevant than that.
Slightly more relevant.
The doctrine of Imago Dei.
Not. Maybe a little relevant, yeah.
The nature of Scripture.
Not super relevant.
Right. Ecclesiology and missiology.
More relevant.
Demonology and angelology.
Not relevant.
Eschatology.
Somewhat relevant.
All right. So, I mean, maybe if you start building websites for like tattoo parlors, some of these will come up more. Get a little demonology in there.
Yeah. That'll be really relevant. Yeah. So, if you had to choose two of the 12 topics that were voted on from our Facebook group, that you think are relevant to your day-to-day life to talk a little bit more about, what would they be?
Yeah, the kind of given is ecclesiology and missiology. And I guess for me, like one of the other projects that I helped with is called the Spiritual First Responders Project, which was, a grant project that needed a website, and we did some other work for this client. But the work they were doing, which again, I felt this part of like helping facilitate, is helping people process deconstruction in what is quite similar to a group therapy session, a little bit different, distinct in certain ways. But then putting it out there, helping promote this, and being a part of providing this service, even though it wasn't mine, I didn't come up with it, I didn't run it. I just, was part of what made it more, again, accessible. It was so rewarding because it's people who are having, a struggle in their life, trying to make sense of something that has stopped making sense, or trying to figure out if they can still belong, maybe if something has changed in their life. And I think, because we go to Theology Bear Camp, we're all familiar with deconstruction, and that's been a big topic in the church for at least, I'd say 5 years now. To be a part of a project that people are actually doing something about it very proactively, and trying to also be, I would say, they were very like non-judgmental. Like it's just this, it felt like something I'm like, I can totally get behind this. Like that for me, I'm like, wow, this is part of my mission. Like, this is why I do my job. And then, in my day-to-day life, one of the big reasons I went to grad school was free will versus predestination.
Interesting.
It was like, it was so funny because I had these bosses. Actually, there were 4 guys that were like the head of this agency, and 2 of them got super into Sam Harris. And, they were like, read this free will book, which is pretty short. You can like just listen to it in an hour or whatever. And I was like, oh man, he's making some good points. So I think I wanted to go to school probably to become an apologist, even though I didn't realize it. Now I think I think about it a little bit less now, but I still think about it. And then in grad school, I actually, my advisor was Myron Penner, who has been at Beer Camp, not this past year, but most recent camps, I guess the 2 prior. And he is like also very into cognitive science. And so I feel like now kind of, that psychology, but like cognitive science side of things, because we read some books that complement philosophy, almost provide empirical evidence at times for philosophical, if not theological concepts. That sometimes gets in my head, and I'm like, well, is this just is this just how we evolved? Like, is this a cognitive mechanism, or is this something I want to do? So that's a whole other side of things. One of the books we had to read was The Believing Primate. It talks a lot about those ideas, and it's really interesting. Some of the studies, they look at kids, like what kids tend to inherently believe in certain ages, like regardless of upbringing. Really interesting.
Yeah, it is really cool to just like to find out.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think that? And they don't know.
They don't know, but sometimes they come up with these little explanations, and you're like, you just said that for no reason.
Yeah, you just made that up.
But it's like really interesting at the same time. Yeah. So, yeah. Actually, I know I keep going back to that opening verse, but like one of the things that we are all members of one another reminds me of this. There's this thing, like if you look this up, there's like the 5 E's of cognition. One of them is like embodied, like our cognition is in our, connected to our body in some way, whether you're a dualist or a monist, whatever you are. But another one of the E's is extended. And so we like that members of one another, like we extend beyond ourselves. And I think that's something we forget in our quite individualistic society that we're in. It's not just like, I'm not just trying to be like a hippie. It's like, no, our actual cognition goes beyond ourselves. And I think that's really cool. Again, you could go more into that, but yeah.
Yeah. We're now going to start the epigenetics podcast and go from there. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so is there any one topic we mentioned that you think is particularly irrelevant?
Oh my.
We won't be mad.
It's tough. I'm very interested in like soteriology and things that even if I view it differently than I did prior to grad school when I was more maybe conservative, now I'm again more progressive, I'm still interested in talking about them. But sometimes I think arguments, I think can get just so theological that it's almost so abstracted from life that it's hard to bring it back to life. And I'm very much of like what you guys are saying. I do think that these things should impact how we actually live. One thing I'm kind of on the fence with this, but I do think, I don't know, demonology, angelology, like people are scared of demons. And so that's like, and it can be a real thing. I've had the spooks in my life where I'm like, what's there? And that matters a lot. But when I think of atonement models, sometimes I think that just goes, you have to have such a history. You have to have a knowledge of like how they developed and what they are. Most people don't know what they are. They only know penal substitutionary atonement because that's what's been presented to them. So it's like, I think this conversation is relevant, but there's almost like an immediate power dynamic at play that's complicated based off the person who just happens to know more about them. And that's tough. So I guess it's tough. It's not that it's irrelevant as much as I wish the conversation could be had in a better way. And I wish, and it's funny. It comes back to the central theme of like, I wish it was just more common knowledge that there were multiple atonement models. But it's not for many people, not me, I didn't hear about that until I was 27. So yeah. Like a little bit of a roundabout dodge the question answer, but
no, I think I was like 30 when I learned about other atonement models. So you beat me to the punch. Yeah.
And it was my one boss at the seminary who was telling me about them. And I was like, what? No way.
I was like 23 years old then.
Well, you're still like super young. So,
so what would you rather, the church or like Trip be focused on for you to hear more about, to be more relevant to your life?
Trip specifically, Trip Fuller.
Yeah, I feel like if Trip talked about it, she's more likely to hear about it.
I'd like to talk directly to Trip Fuller now. If you're not Trip Fuller, you can tune out. Now that they're gone. No, I'm just kidding.
Now that everyone stopped listening.
I think it's funny. Again, this is what you learned in grad school studying philosophy more than anything, to complicate the question. I think Trip covers so many great topics. Do I listen to every podcast? No, I don't. Sorry. Homebrew Christianity is so good, but I don't listen. And part of it's because, I could listen to it all on 2.5 speed as he does. I could learn from his ways and then churn through more podcasts. But I'm just also, my interests right now are like divided through kind of some different things. Actually, one of the things I won't get into is like, I started trying to learn more about like actual how politics work this year. And I was like, this is a whole new world. That's like one other thing that's taking time. And I'm on an improv team, which is like random, but as you guys know, there's a lot of things that can quickly take up your time. And a 10-month-old puppy. So I guess the one thing that he's crazy though. Also shout out Copper. I would love to be more imaginative in how we can have conversations. And like, I think part of that is already happening. Theology Beer Camp is a great example. Bring people together in real life, give them topics. I mean, there's even more opportunity for that in person, but you guys directly facilitate that when you're there and you're helping with the Geek Stage or whatever it will be named forthwith. And you're facilitating it through this. Like, I think even when you bring a guest on, I'm sure, of course, it's benefiting listeners, but the guest, like me here talking to you, I mean, albeit virtually, I have to engage differently and we're having a real conversation. I think that's amazing. But one of the clients I have, so credit where credit is due, has talked about how a lot of things in life can be very monodirectional. And a lot of, I mean, think of how much we just absorb. Like I am still listening to so many podcasts, or you're reading books, or, you're looking at guides, and then it's like, okay, I've ingested all this. What do I do with it? So I think connecting it to the practical world is so beautiful. Again, that's kind of your endeavor here. And I would say, I think that's where having the in-person of church and other events, I think that's where I want to figure out how to facilitate that. Actually, another podcast I've been listening to is called Better Events. Like just found out about it recently. Yeah, but it's like, okay, when you like little things, and this is what I have to think about with camp, but they have thought about it for even longer than I have. They're like professionals for years and years. Like one of them helps run the Olympics. They're like, when someone arrives at an event, what are they thinking, and how do you get them involved? Are they just going to go get a drink and then stand around? They don't know anyone, or do you give them some sort of prompt? Like, do you have sticky notes on a board that they can go like do something with, stuff like that. So I feel like you guys kind of already think that way, again, based on your questions, but that intentional thinking, that whether an event planner does it or a podcast host does it or something like that, to help other people is such a gift, because not everyone will do that.
Yeah. To be fair, though, they do get at least 2 years to plan the Olympics. So
yeah, not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Just kidding. Just kidding, Trev.
Oh man. Well, one thing we are asking everyone in the series, that I think is really important, and it's kind of what we've been dancing around this whole time. Like, everybody sees the world through different eyes, right? Everyone has a different perspective. Is there anything that you think in your work that you see that maybe our pastors, church leaders, theologians, seminary students, maybe they wouldn't be able to see for themselves, that they could learn about from your perspective?
Yeah. I read a book in grad school called I think it was Which Church, Whose Interpretation. It was by Meryl Westphal. And it was kind of a summary book. I could be getting the title wrong, but Whose Interpretation is definitely in there. And I was very inspired at the end, because it's complicated to deal with theological positions that are different. And I think, I don't think that's the whole, oh, look, here I go. I don't think that's the whole of church. I really don't. Because it's not, again, I don't think everything is just like, oh, I assent to this doctrine. That's not how we operate in life. But I do think that, and it's very complicated to open things up for more insights and opinions. But something from that book that really inspired me was kind of like, okay, it'd be great to have, more church meetings to actually interact with each other in a way that is like truly kind of open. It's not just like, here's, again, that monodirectional, here's information, or here, where you're at the service, now go home. And some churches, I'm sure, do this really well already. But I would say, in terms of the event side of things, it's just like, there are so many people who go to them and then do feel alone. So anytime any leader can, whether you're directly going to someone who's just clearly by themselves, or you're empowering people to know how to do that, I think that's crucial. And then I'll switch to the website real quick. You might have a website that is either confusing or turning people away. And the best way to know is to ask people who are not already familiar with your website. The easiest step is to go through it pretending to be a certain person and actually read and say, what's the way that this could maybe be taken the wrong way? Like kind of that critical lens. And I say that because so many people, including myself, are a little bit nervous about maybe going to a new church where, like, okay, are they going to try and sneak some certain, I don't know, theological concepts in a aggressive way? Like, I went to one super, super reformed church once. My sister works at Wycliffe. So she was like someone she knew was at a church, and they were like sending them off with Wycliffe as well. And we're sitting there, and the pastor was praying, thanking God that we are not members of the damned and that we are not condemned to hell, unlike those who are not chosen. Because it's so Calvinist. That's the theological perspective. And I left, fully depressed, because it's not a very optimistic, it's not a very sunny view of the world.
Yeah, it's just,
now, I'm not saying...
At least we aren't them, Everyone outside this building is just...
It sounds so much like the Pharisee praying that Jesus condemned. It's like, oh, God, thank you that I'm not this guy. And I'm like, that's...
Yes.
How is that different?
Yes. No, I know. I was like, this is like, it was so far from what I had experienced in like years. And I was like, whoa, like, this is nuts. But I would say just almost kind of like the question of like, is there certain language I use that's like in my industry? There's churchy language. We all know Christianese. I'm sure we all speak it on this call.
Amen.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but like
unpack
just being
that for
aware.
us.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm like, I know there's like, you can kind of walk a line here. It's like, I'm not just saying like be super seeker friendly, but like, we don't have to do things the way they were done in the 90s per se. And just that spirit of hospitality, looking through a lens of hospitality at what you're providing people, might just make you want to reassess some of it and say, okay, like, is there a way we could refresh this? And it doesn't take $1 billion. You can usually just do it yourself. I'm not saying like hire me or something.
Yeah. But so I'm going to build off that just a little bit, since TJ said I didn't talk as much as usual this episode.
Up to that point, you hadn't. I think you're good now.
Well, sorry. I apologize. Man, I can't remember the name of the one book. I was trying to find it earlier, but I have a book that's like the theology of our church buildings. And like there's theology to why buildings are built the way they are. Also, an easier read, Pagan Christianity, Frank Viola. He writes an entire chapter on like how our church buildings and everything is set up because we got inspired by the pagans. And that's why so many of us take on the same attributes and characteristics as pagans and not the early church. And it's like, oh, yeah, like the building actually does matter. Are your seats surrounding one man on a stage on a podium? What's that tell you? What's that make your brain, like psychologically, stuff's happening?
Yes, totally.
I also just want to throw out a little complaint. Because one of the things I think irritates me is like usually the churches that are really good at what you're talking about, I don't want to go to. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's usually like the conservative and, we're whole church unity. I love everybody, but I myself am not an evangelical conservative Christian. I am a little bit more progressive these days.
Yeah.
And it irritates me that like it's so much easier for me to go to a non-denominational evangelical church because they make it all about the people going there. And it's like I feel welcomed, I feel nice. And then like if I go to a church I want to go to that's like high liturgical and progressive, it's like if I don't know the steps, I feel so uncomfortable. No one's going to talk to me most of the time. And I'm like, man, I want that experience, but with this theology. Can we just like figure that out?
No, I totally hear you. And it's funny. I mean, again, it's such a hard, you could really get into this conversation. And it's so funny. I was actually just talking about church buildings with someone recently, but that element of experience, it does come back to so much. And again, trying to balance that with not just being like, all right, well, we're just basing this off of what people want to like consume, like not just like making it what people want. And I think there's almost for those who have, I don't even know exactly if maturity is the right word, but the ability, so cute, the ability to say, okay, I might not love this stuff about this church, but I'm going because I believe, in X, Y, or Z about it. And I want to be a part of changing it. Like, I want to say, good for them. That's great. But yes, I feel, I mean, having been single most of my 20s and like when I moved to Canada, I went and visited all these churches and I'm like, oh, like it's so tough to visit as a single woman. And some people take pity on you and some people just ignore you, like it's a tough thing. So yeah.
Totally. So are there any questions that you think we might have missed that you think people might want to know about you or your work?
Well, I mean, I was going to say if there's stuff you're curious about, I feel like, I'm like, did I explain it well? And also I was like, should I go more into the marketing side at all? I focus so much on the website, but that's not the entirety of it.
I don't know, I feel like that's the part more people would be likely to encounter, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
You get it.
But
yeah.
Well, one thing we are doing before we wrap up, just the last thing before we wrap up, I think. No. Okay, you just tell me no. Okay, anyway. We usually ask a practical action for everybody. For this series, we want to know specifically if someone in the church or the church itself, like a local community, was like, hey, we want to do more for the event planners, website designers amongst us. What's something they could do for someone like you that would just make your life a little bit easier?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I mean, what's really interesting about churches, and this goes, kind of beyond maybe even me, but churches are a space, and that is super valuable. It's a lot of spaces, especially in cities, can be expensive to rent or use. And so offering up that space, whether for like clubs or meetups, like I know, again, people in certain professions love to do meetups and they might have to pay to use that space to, enable that to happen. If churches work with people, especially creatives, it can be really meaningful for them. And I'll give an example, not exactly again in my work, but we had an improv show at a church. They like let our team have a show there, and it was a bit echoey. It was Episcopalian, so quite a big room. But what was great is all the proceeds went to one of their ministries that was like to help people experiencing homelessness. And I'm like, nice. That's kind of in a way symbiotic. People can laugh and people can give money to a great cause. So being creative in those ways and like saying, okay, maybe improv's not always on brand. It's not great. It's not like it's just like irreverence nonstop. Like improv can be, it can be very actually like PG if you want it to.
Yeah, if you're careful,
If you're careful, if you're not TJ. No, I'm just kidding. But it's something like that's kind of goes to the broader community of people that might not go in the church except for that event. So, and it was like, oh, and that's how I found out about that ministry. And I was like, oh, this is something I might want to get involved with at some point too.
Yeah, actually, the other podcast TJ and I are part of, Systematic Ecology, once a year, usually in the summer, our hosts have a get together and we record episodes live amongst ourselves and we invite patrons, but we're like, this is kind of a for us thing. Each year, churches let us use a room to record in, and it's I don't know, it's such a big blessing, and I don't think they probably don't even notice it, and they probably are just like, yeah, whatever, some weirdos came in and talked. But for us, you know, it's a good moment for us because we rarely get to see each other in person, so it's so cool that they let that happen.
Totally, it's a huge gift.
So what would change in our communities around us if we started using churches like they were the center of the community, like you suggested?
Well, it'd be nice, first of all, if churches didn't have to be seen as weird, by a lot of people, but a place where it used to be, like one of the third spaces, right? Where it was welcoming, and it's oh, they're gonna have this thing there or that thing there. I mean, I have, still, even with what has changed, I have so many positive associations with church, in especially the communal aspect. But I think right now, again, especially people who have never gone to church or just very firmly outside of it and maybe not as extroverted as I am, there's such a need for that. Something I thought about recently is, how they have the meal trains in churches? Where do you get that elsewhere? That's such a beautiful thing that is a really part of many church communities. And so I think if there was that hospitality and in a way that kind of is not just you come to us, but we'll provide some things for you, some opportunities. I think that would it could open a lot of possibilities. Again, I see in the city specifically, there's so many old church buildings and a lot of them with small congregations. And I'm there's so much that could happen here.
It's true. It's always true. The last thing we do before we really wrap it up is the God moment segment. We just take a moment. Yeah. We take a moment to talk about, what God's been doing in our lives, whether it be a blessing, challenge, moment of worship, whatever the case is. I always make Josh go first. So
quick and easy this time. Quick and easy. We got a fence So those who've been following the show for a while know Copper was injured due to a gunshot in October, and it's been a long, hard journey. He had his muzzle off a couple weeks ago, and something about the fence, it just kind of feels like this journey has finally like it's reached not the end, but it's reached that point where I'm like, yeah, such a burden's just let off. Like Copper went from not having a free space at all, then getting shot, to healing and now having a free space to run around in a better neighborhood. And like, yeah, he went through some stuff, but life is better for him. And bringing, I mean, he's just a dog, but it brings so much joy to me. And yeah, it matters.
Yeah, I would probably get shot if I got a free yard out of it.
I would not, for the record, especially in the face. No, thank you.
Yeah, maybe not. He's so strong.
Goodness.
Copper's better than me.
Yeah.
TJ, do you know Joshua and I were together on that day?
I did know that.
That was a big day.
Yeah. Anyway. Kristen did all the communicating. And that's why she's Indiana Jones. That's
I
was trying to get Joshua on an earlier flight. I was like I'm like, can I
felt
talk
like a
to
zombie wandering around the airport, and Kristen's just like guiding me, like it's fine.
As you should have been.
Yeah.
I didn't call Josh. When I saw that message, I just called Tiffany, and I was like, I hope she's okay. Yeah. But the reason, I was going to talk about it just now too. The reason I wasn't there is similar to the issue I have this week that God has laid upon me. I just can't stop having car issues.
No.
This time I rented a car to go on like a mini vacation, drive to Nashville. Great time, super worth it. And I hit a pothole on I-40, which, if you're aware, was pretty much destroyed completely by Hurricane Helene.
Oh my goodness.
It's still a gorgeous road, but they are like still rebuilding it. It's like a 2-lane highway for most of it now. And I think I just hit a big pothole, dented the wheel, and now I owe that guy a lot of money.
Oh no!
To replace his really nice wheel. But it's gonna be okay.
That is a challenge.
Moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. God has challenged him to find more money.
Yeah. Like,
or for people to make more tips on our Captivate website.
Yeah. I'm actually outsourcing.
Man.
I'm gonna be all right. It's a lot less annoying this time because it's not my car.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks, but it's not my car this time. Yeah.
I was gonna say you're coming this year, right?
I hope.
Yeah, he got the car problems out of the way early this year. Yeah.
There we go. Yes, the annual car problems struck just really early.
Yeah.
So, Chris, do you have a God moment for us?
Man, I have a lot going on that some of it I'm like, I gotta tell you guys, like, when we actually see each other at camp or another time. Too much for one podcast. But I have been really grateful. Yeah, I've been feeling just, I was like, it's so funny. I was just at the primary care doctor just to visit, like nothing super crazy, but I was just like praying, like, and the weather's really nice today, which is always like, just lifts your spirits too. But
yeah,
there's just like, I don't know. There's a lot going on that can be challenging, and a lot that I don't know like exactly how it's going to work out, but just feeling, I guess, a lot of like little blessings from like friends and family recently, and kind of just taking stock of that. I was like, wow, that was like just been hitting me a lot. So I feel very grateful even with some of the uncertainty. So
yeah.
That's
how I go.
Could I be more vague?
Yes.
Yeah, it does sound challenging.
But if you like the episode, please consider sharing it with a friend. Share with your enemies. Share with a cousin. Big fan of that. Yeah, share with your cousins. Stitch, specifically, if you're listening.
Especially cousins. Wait, Stitch? You have a cousin named Stitch?
No, I'm just saying
Lilo?
like Lilo.
Oh, yeah, Stitch has a lot of cousins, according to that.
Yeah,
TV
that's like a 620 listener
we'd
boost
be the
right there.
all-powerful church, I think. But anyway. Also, guys, consider checking out other shows on the Amazal Podcast Network. We mentioned Systematic Ecology. Check that out. Will has the homily that I keep forgetting to update. Check it out. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show or before the show, but Brandon Knight, Kung Fu Pizza Party. That's worth checking out. So check it out.
Yeah, and we hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to be joined by Officer Thurman Lofton about how his faith impacts his life as a police officer in South Carolina. After that, someone with the last name Blackwell. Yeah, will hopefully be joining us to discuss how their faith impacts their life as a welder. And then Joshua's brother and sister-in-law, Matthew and Virginia Knoll, will hopefully be joining us to discuss their day jobs as a logistics manager and physical therapist. And at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on the show.
He doesn't know, though, so someone does have to tell him. Yeah. Invite him for us. We are simply too lazy.
Yeah, someone else do it. Yeah, we're too busy, and surely he's not, so.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, you can always sponsor our efforts to educate and unite the church on Captivate, Patreon, or Apple Podcast. If you're not into the subscription thing, again, you can leave a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the description notes. Thank you again, and please come back next week. Music for this episode was provided by the Porter's Gate Collective. The intro, transition, and outro are all different parts of the song Day by Day. You can hear the full song on Apple Music, Spotify, or the Porter's Gate Collective website.